In this video, I'm going to give you a demonstration of how to work with arrays in C#. And remember, an array is a collection. It's a group of variables of the same type. So an integer is just a single value. If we need more than one integer, like scores or something, then maybe we want an array of integers. So how do we make an array of integers? Let's just make an array of integers. It's a nice easy place to start. So it's the data type followed by the square brackets. Now I read this as an integer array. So think of it, when you think of the square brackets, think of an array. So it's an integer array. And maybe I'll just call it numbers or something. All right, so now I've made an integer array called numbers. Now, this is a single integer called numbers. This is, whoops, what did I just do there? I had a lot of crazy stuff in the clipboard. So this is a single integer. This is an array of integers. Well, how many integers are in this array? Well, none until I actually create the array using the new operator. So to actually carve out the space that's going to store these integers, I have to use the new operator, the data type, the square brackets, and then I can specify in here how many integers I want. So let's just take this statement and pick it apart. Int square bracket, that's an integer array called numbers, equals, or now points to, a new integer array with 10 slots. That's kind of how I would read that. An integer array called numbers is now set equal to, or points to, a new integer array with 10 slots in it. So let's actually, this is a complete program right here. Let me actually run it. I'll put a breakpoint there using F9. And let's see what we get in the debugger. All right, so if I hit F10 to step over that, let's look at numbers here. And if I expand it, you can see I actually have 10 slots in here that start at 0. I have slot 0, and then goes up to slot 9. So what I have done here is I have created a collection that's got slots in it for 10 integers. All right, well, what if I wanted to go put some numbers into that array? Let me make a random number generator. There we go. And I'll use that to make, maybe, I'll put a random number between 1 and 100 in every slot. So how would I do that? Well, this is where a for loop comes in, like loops and arrays, or loops and lists, loops and lists, yeah, they go together. When you have a group of things and you need to search them or do something to them, you need some sort of structure to set up a repetition. So let me make a for loop here. Now, I'm going to make this for loop by letting Visual Studio create it for me. I'm going to type the word for and hit tab twice. And now I have stubbed out the structure for the for loop. So a for loop is controlled by a counter variable, which here is called I, and I could change it if I wanted to. Now, I'm going to start I at 0, and I'm going to run I up to, but not including, this upper limit here. So what's the upper limit I want to go to? Well, I could put in 10 here, because that's the number of things in my array, but a safer way to do this is to use the length property of an array. So an array is a collection of data, but an array also has a length property, so you know how many things are in it. So now what I will do is I'm going to put a random number in slot I. So I is going to start at 0, and it's going to go up to however many things I have in my array. So when I is 0, I'll put a random number in slot 0. When I is 1, I'll put a random number in slot 1. All right, so let's actually do this. How would I do that? How would I set the value in some slot in the array? So it's the array name, numbers, and now I have to specify which slot, square brackets. So the square brackets is for the slot, and I'll use my loop counter I, and I'll set that equal to r.next, 1 to 101. There we go. That'll give me a number between 1 and 100. Okay, so let's run this and see what it does. So we're going to sit here and kind of wait for this to start up. Okay, so there's our array. I'll hit F5 to keep running. And now, watch what happens. So on our first pass through the loop, I is 0. So I'm going to be setting numbers, square brackets, 0 equal to a new random number. Now let's go look in our debugger. We can see that slot 0 now has a 67 in there. Now let's keep going. Now we're going to add 1 to I. Is I less than the number than length? And you can see if I hover over that, you can see the length is 10. So now I is set to 1. So I'm going to put a value in slot 1. So let's go look in the array in the debugger. So a 69 got put in slot 1. Now we're going to add 1 to I and test our condition. Is I less than the length of the array? Yes, it still is. I is now 2. So let's put a random number in slot 2. And you can see how this is crawling through the list, putting a random number in each slot. So let me put a breakpoint here at the very bottom. And let's take a look now and notice that all 10 slots have been initialized. All right, cool. Well, let's print them out. Let's print them out. Okay, so let me up here, let me write out something. Console creating a 10 integers. Okay. The array contains, all right, and now let's print them all out. Now I could also do this in the same loop, but let's do it using a different type of loop. I'll say populating the array. Populating the array. Okay. And then let's dump out the stuff in the array. So I could use a for loop for this too. I'll make a for loop that goes from 0 up to the number or the size of the array. And I'll print out, slot, and then what's my my loop counter? I equals, okay, now how do I get the value out of a slot so I can display it? Okay, well that's the name of the array, numbers, followed by the square brackets, and then the number of the slot I want, or a variable that contains that number. So this is going to print in slot I, slot I is equal to, and then it's going to go pull the value out of slot I. And then let me put in console.readKey to hold this thing open. Read key. There we go. All right, now, so let's run this and see what it does. There we go. Creating. Oh, it says create an array of integers. It should say creating. Okay. Now it's going to hit my breakpoint. So I'll clear my breakpoint and just keep running. Let's see. Creating an array of integers. Why is it not printing stuff out? All right. Let me hit the pause button and see where my program is. Populating the array. Let me try this again. Creating an array. There it is, it worked that time. So it says creating an array of 10 integers, populating the array, and then it dumps out. In slot 0, there's a 62. In slot 1, there's an 89. Maybe I'll actually even write it out. Instead of talking about slots, I'll say numbers, square brackets. So now we'll print it out using the array syntax. There it is. So number square brackets 0 is a 78. Number square brackets 1 is a 73. Number square brackets 9 is an 86. Now, what if I wanted to print them out again, but a different way? So there's another type of loop that's very useful, and it's useful when you don't need to know the exact index of something. Like let's say we just want to write all this stuff out to the console, but we don't care about particular index numbers. That's the for each loop. For each, tab, tab. So for each thing T in some collection. This is our for S in all ships. So for every integer, we'll call it I, in our numbers, then we'll just print it out to the console. And we'll just write I to the console. So, and then let me put a little header here for each loop, just so we can split it up visually. So this will dump out every integer in numbers to the console. So the for each loop is very handy when you don't care about specific index numbers. And then let's take a look at that. And then you can see it dumped out. There's the for each loop dumping them out to the console as well. So there's an example of how to create an array of some data type in C#. If we wanted to have an array of floating point numbers, we could do that too. A floating point array called like floats equals new float, 100. Now I've just created an array of 100 floats. What if I needed an array of 100 picture boxes? Picture box array, I'll call it PB, equals new picture box array 5, right? So that's how you create an array. You specify the data type followed by the square brackets. Why is it? Oh, you know what? I'm not in a form application. That's why it doesn't know what a picture box is. Oh, what if I want an array of random number generators or something for some reason? Random. There we go. Equals new random. So now I've created an array of 5 random number generators. So that's the syntax for creating an array. To get something out of a slot in the array, you use the square brackets with an index, and to put something into an array, you use the array name with these square brackets and an index. And that's pretty much all there is to an array, except also remember that arrays are objects and have a length property. So, and that these indexes start at 0. So notice we're not going from 1 up to 10, we're going from 0 to 9 in our loop. So remember, array indexes start at 0 and go up to 1 less than the size of the array. That's a very important concept. There it is. There's a demo of how to do arrays in C#.